Good morning, comrades. You're listening to WHIV-LP New Orleans 102.3. This is your weekly Good Morning Comrade. Jeff here on the show. We have a very special guest today. She is Laura Wadlin she's formerly of the DSA MPC, and she is one of the authors of the article in The Call, 12 Myths That Threatened the Power of Our Strike. Strikers and expect risk-averse advice from the experts. To win, rank and file members must be in on strategy discussions. She wrote that along with Meryl Di Pasquale. I hope I didn't ruin that too much. But anyway, Laura, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Hey, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me.
I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about. So you were a community college professor at PRCC, Portland CC. I'm sorry, PCC. In Portland, Oregon, and you guys went on strike. Tell us, so when did this happen? Tell us about it and just sort of like run that whole thing down for me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, this was very recent. I still feel like I'm recovering from it, honestly. But yeah, so we struck for 3 weeks in March. The way the term system works in Portland is that we have winter term that ends in mid-March and spring term that begins in the start of April. And so we struck during the last week of classes in winter term, over finals week, over spring break, and into the first week of spring term. And we delayed spring term by a week. We were striking over an economic reopener. That means that we basically had bargained the full contract 2 years earlier. We normally bargain every 4 years, but in the middle you do a little renegotiation of just the wages and benefits portion. Mm-hmm. So we were just renegotiating that on paper. That's what was supposed to be happening. And the college was offering us 0.35% COLA. Again, that's not 3.5, 0.35. Okay.
Less than 40 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Might as well just be zero at that point. Yeah. I know if you work a job where you don't have a union and you don't get yearly like cost of living adjustment raises, inflation raises, that might not seem that big of a deal. But if you're in a union and you normally depend on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% even every year, that's like crazy. It's like, what is the point of even having a union if you don't get that? So
and also just to say like the cost of living went up by significantly more than 35 cents on the dollar.
Oh yeah, Portland is not a cheap city to live in. And so, yeah, people were really feeling it. We did get really good raises 2 years ago when we bargained, but that was like catching up from being just utterly decimated during the pandemic. But
and this little drop in the bucket is like a way to like sort of de facto claw that back by
exactly. Oh yeah, totally. And really it was an attempt to like punish us for such a good contract, because 2 years ago we won this amazing contract. We were very strike ready. We didn't end up having to strike, but we got job security for part-timers, we got a scheduling autonomy, tons of other amazing things that were just really historic, and really big raises. Like we got minimum, like everything included, minimum 20% raises for everyone. That was 2 years ago. And that was the first contract negotiations of our college president, and she was new back then. And I think she experienced that and was like, all right, this time let's play hardball. So anyway, they were playing hardball. We were negotiating for like a whole year almost, and they were offering us nothing. And so just to give some context on our unions, so at Portland Community College there are 2 unions. One is my union. I teach English as a second language. So all the faculty instructors, that includes full-time, which you might consider like tenured, but we don't really have tenure, but that's what that means. And then part-time faculty, or like adjunct. We don't use that word, but so full-time and part-time faculty, and then academic professionals, which includes like advisors, recruitment and admissions, enrollment specialists, things like that.
So these are 2 different units?
No, that's my unit. That's all. So I'll use the phrase APs, that stands for academic professionals. That's a significant portion of our unit, and then faculty. So we're one union together, which is actually really amazing. A lot of higher ed unions are separate. They have full-time faculty and academic professionals together, but then adjuncts are separate. And both camps are weakened because of that. We're really lucky that we have everyone. Well, I should say not everyone, but the all faculty and APs together. The other union is the classified union. Classified just means support staff. So, but this runs the gamut. So this could be groundskeepers, custodians, food service, administrative assistants, IT workers, public safety officers, all kinds of different jobs like that.
So basically, the people that make the school run in a non-academic capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
In some senses,
I mean,
you mentioned like other kinds of professionals. They are participating in a direct way in academics. So I guess that was not a correct statement by me.
well,
But like,
yeah, I mean, they do some academic work too, that's for sure. But yeah, it is like, I mean, it's not entirely accurate to say this, but there is a bit of a like white collar, blue collar, or like academic, non-academic breakdown, but that's also not quite accurate either. But anyway, so faculty and APs on one side, and then in one union, and then classified in a different union. So my union, the faculty union, represents about 1,600 workers, and that's over 1,000 instructors. And classified workers are about 700 people, and that's pretty large, because Portland Community College is really large. We serve 80,000 students in the Portland metro area every year, and it's very working class, very diverse school. There's 4 main campuses, and I think like over 10 like satellite campuses and little centers and stuff. So it's very, very big. And but yeah, so our 2 unions, so the fact that we ended up striking together was one of the really historic and just transformative parts of our strike. It's very unusual to have multiple unions striking together, but especially across job classes like that. Like in higher ed, there definitely have been, I believe in the Rutgers strike. I don't remember exactly which job classes, but there were, I think maybe faculty and graduate students or something struck together. So like having academic workers strike together is a little bit more common, but having like educators and support staff strike at the same time is very unusual and really incredible. The only other instance of that I'm aware of, I think that happened in Minnesota a little bit ago. But anyway, so so yeah, we're really lucky that we, because of like our unions have historically worked together. We're both affiliated with American Federation of Teachers, AFT, different locals, but still affiliated with the same national and state affiliate union. There'd been a history of our unions working together. That kind of fell off for a while. There wasn't a very good relationship between the leadership of our 2 unions, but because we had worked together.
I'm sure that wasn't awkward.
Yeah, not at all. Anyway, so, but yeah, I mean, people in my union had always expressed an interest in working more closely with classified people in their union, and I believe the same is true there in the classified union too. Although there is a bit of a difficult dynamic there sometimes, because of course the college treats faculty and APs with more respect, which is really disgusting. And I think we like can see that. And many of my coworkers like notice that and don't like that. We feel angry on behalf of classified workers, but also, I mean, it's
a division. It's the whole point of that is to create a division between.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the whole point, is to create tiers. Yeah. But I mean, the other truth is, unfortunately, there are people in my union who also treat classified that way, treat them like the help, which is also really disgusting, and also just like feeds into the anti-solidaristic approach of management. So, and of course we are a larger unit. There's just more faculty and APs than there are classified. We have higher income, more flexibility. And so, yeah, there's just like definitely some inequality there that can breed distrust or resentment, which I think is very understandable and something we have to really work to get past. And I think our strike really helped us do that. But anyway, so so we had a history of working together across the two unions. And fortunately, we had a similar like schedule. So our contracts expired around the same time. That date, though, isn't super important. A lot of unions, like especially in the private sector, it's like they have a practice of not working once their contract is expired. Like they don't work without a contract. That's not really true for us. A lot of unions work without a contract for a long time, but at least we still expired around the same time, and we started bargaining around the same time. So in the state of Oregon, there's a law called PECBA, which basically is just it's very, very similar to the National Labor Relations Act, but it's for public sector workers. And but the big difference is that there's a whole rigmarole for public sector bargaining. Like there's a whole calendar of timelines and deadlines, and you have to be in bargaining for 150 days, and then you can file for mediation, and then you have to wait for a state mediator, and then you do mediation for a certain amount of time, and then you submit final offers, and then there's a cooling off period, and blah blah blah. And all of that is of course intended to discourage you from ever going on strike.
It reminds me of when the railroad workers were about to go on strike about 2-3 years ago, and they operate under the Railway Labor Act, and that's a very sort of similar, I guess, like process where you can't just, we don't have a contract, F you, we're going on strike. You can't do that.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, and of course, that is also intended to strongly discourage, like impede their ability to exercise their right to go on strike, which is terrible. But yeah, so we started bargaining around the same time, which means we were about at the same point in the process of, this calendar of stupid deadlines, and or not even deadlines, just like barriers, I guess, obstacles to exercising our right. Yeah. So it was about in fall, so a few months before we ended up striking, where I think our union started to realize, man, we have been bargaining for a long time. They are really lowballing us here more than they ever have before. This is not going well. Like, wow, we really need to like seriously think about striking. Now, fortunately, we had laid a lot of foundation ahead of time. Like I mentioned, 2 years ago, our union was really strike ready. And so we kind of picked back up where we left off. And we were doing some preparation. Like we had open bargaining, which was really important. That means that we members were able to attend bargaining sessions and observe, and it was all transparent. There was no like backdoor secret meetings between our team and administration, which was really important. They hated that, but they're forced to concede on that. And so we had open bargaining. Members were plugged in. They were seeing how things were going. They were not happy with it. We did a strike pledge, and meaning like we got people to pledge ahead of time, like, okay, if it comes to it, I will go on strike, I will vote yes. And so we started doing that. And so in about January, we started working together with the classified union in a joint strike committee. So me and Meryl, my co-author of the article, she and I were the co-chairs of that committee, and that was a joint committee across unions, which was like really like we never done that before. That was very unusual, and it was wonderful. It really broke down a lot of those barriers. And I mean, I think a lot of us really were just blown away that the college was being so intransigent on these issues, on the wages and benefits, but at the same time they were also really being insulting to just the purpose of the college, because they had been cutting entire programs that were very popular, very well enrolled. For example, we have a program called Music and Sonic Arts, which is not a traditional music program. It's like a behind this, but like backstage, like technical kind of music program where you learn to be like a sound tech. And it's a very unique program across the country. And like I say, it's very popular, and PCC decided to just cut it whole cloth. And students and workers in that program have been fighting to save it for over a year now. And there were other programs too that were being slated to cut, like gerontology, and other programs. And also at that same time, they were reducing course offerings in some of the most essential programs. Like, for example, Writing 121. That is the college class. Okay.
They're not going to writing in college. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. It's like to take any English class, to take any class that would require writing. What do all college students take? Writing 121. It's literally the class.
Thing. It's so fundamental.
Yeah, it's so fundamental. It's like you have to take it. It's a prereq. It's a prereq for so many other classes.
What are you going to do with a community college degree if you don't have writing?
Yeah, exactly. So this is crazy. Now they did offer it, but they reduced the number of offerings, and we had this situation in fall where 500 students were waitlisted for Writing 121, could have run dozens of classes, provided income to dozens of instructors, and they turned those students away. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you shoot yourself in the foot? And they would not offer any explanation for why they were doing this. Similarly, they planned on cutting course offerings in math 40% compared to the previous year over the summer. And again, these are for like basic math courses. 40% of offerings.
That's the two things that like you think about, like, oh, these are the things I got to take when I go to college.
Yes. And another one that's so essential is,
besides obviously like gender studies, of course, which everybody has to take as well.
Well, no, they're like, yeah, it's like math and English.
That's what the haters say, just whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's many things that are basic, but we already know they're trying to take away the liberal studies classes, right? We are already used to that.
They've cut away at that, and they're getting to the core of like what education is. And sorry to like just jump in, like community colleges very often, like I went to community college. They're like working class, like that's where working class people go to college.
Exactly.
High profile, like flagship universities. These are like the opposite of like, oh, this person went to a liberal arts college or like whatever. I don't even care about that. Like that's all BS too. But like even if you look at a community college, that is the opposite. You go to community college to either get into a larger college or to get a job. Like that's literally
And a lot of people who were fighting the closure of these programs, they shared with the board of directors, hey, this program changed my life. Like some students even shared that they were seriously depressed and even contemplating ending their lives until they enrolled in community college, found a program that gave them purpose, gave them community. It really just like very moving stories. And that has been my experience. Like I see that. I hear that from people all the time. People say community college changed my life. Community college saved my life. So many people say that. But yeah, so there and another course they wouldn't offer was anatomy and physiology. You need that if you're going to become a nurse, any healthcare career. Tons of certificates and stuff need anatomy and physiology. It is the Writing 121 of that type of science. So anyway, really terrible. Doesn't make any sense, right? What is the college's ultimate motivation? I mean, I think what's important to understand is that higher education administration is a resume racket. It's the people in charge in education are not there. Higher education administration. They're there to pad their resumes, use the school as a stepping stone to get them off onto something more prestigious. Maybe become president of a university or become an education consultant for a corporate education firm.
On earth.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're
they might not be the most evil people on earth, but they're up there.
I mean, they're doing something deeply depraved, which
Mhm.
is exploiting a public good,
Yes.
education, one of the most important parts of human society, for their own personal gain, and they are destroying it in the process.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think that that is basically what, a lot of, like, this happens in the private sector too, right? It's like you get a new CEO, wants to do new initiatives, more cost saving. They're like, I'm going to streamline, I'm going to reduce redundancies, I'm going to,
Up towards
maximize
elite
our,
solutions.
yeah, I'm going
Towards
to maximize our Q2, Q3 revenue, whatever, they're just so narrowly focused on uh just like the next quarter, like literally. It's just like private sector stuff. So
gamers, we call them min-maxers.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's short-sighted. Um
It's all
and
every quarter, and like everything. Only thing that matters is the next quarter, the next quarter, the
yes,
next quarter.
exactly. I mean, it's funny when you're in a school and you have a quarter system, because it's like
Yeah,
literally all that matters is the next quarter.
yeah.
But yeah. So that was the backdrop of our strike, where we're facing these massive cuts. Students are just complaining that they're waitlisted to oblivion. They can't get into the classes they need. Their programs are dying. I mean, honestly, it felt like, wow, PCC is dying. Like, our strike is the defibrillator.
Mhm.
We have to do this. Like, we have no choice. And it's funny, being a socialist, like, I believe in the power of strikes. I feel generally positive about strikes because of how transformative they can be. I've wanted us to exercise our power because they really fundamentally change people's consciousness. So, like, I was fired up. I was like, yeah, let's go. But another part of me was like, wow, even if I wasn't feeling that way, I would really truly have no choice right now. And that is very, very scary.
It reminds me of so I remember 2019 when the Chicago teachers went on strike. It's not like they were only going on strike for like more money or better better conditions on the job. That was part of it, but a huge part of that was that they were taking nurses out of schools and like cutting down
Yeah.
on social workers and do so like one of the things that is always when it comes to like how the boss talks about it, and also how media tends to just parrot that, is that all these greedy teachers are going on to strike because they want more money or whatever, and they're greedy. And the real answer, the real thing is that nobody understands the conditions on the job more than the people that are there. So and again, like the thing that people like you just described that, like, you were saying that you care about the institution that you work at and you understand the value of the job that you do, because that's what you do every day. You choose to do that every day. There's probably a bunch of things that you could be doing with your life that isn't that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I imagine there is. But
Yeah.
like, you need to do the thing that you do because you think it's important and you enjoy doing it and you love it, all this other stuff. And you're not going to like just become, a college university professor to like, I'm gonna come and wreck this thing up and make it worse or anything like that. But that's the portrayal that the management class, the people that are actually trying to do that, try to say. And unfortunately, that's what gets sort of like megaphoned out there into the sort of public consciousness, unless you can push it around, because they have, capital has the tools to do that, and the only thing that we have is one another.
Absolutely. And really, in our strike, we saw that that strategy of trying to paint the educators and the support staff as like greedy or destructive just
Hmm.
fell completely flat with students.
Hmm.
And part of the reason for that is that um, we had a plan for talking to students about the possibility of our strike pretty early on.
And
So yeah, in uh January. So again, we struck in on March 11th, I believe was the first day. So the beginning of winter term was in January, and we started having department meetings where we would talk about being strike ready in that department. So like math strike readiness meeting, um, English strike readiness meeting, etc. And in those meetings, we would talk about, okay, how are we going to let our students know? What are the things that our students are going to be particularly worried about? Especially because we knew that if we were going to go on strike, it was going to be at the end of the term. So this big question of like, okay, how is the term going to wrap up? Like, are students going to be in limbo? Are they going to get credits? Like, what's going to happen if they're in a certificate program and they need to graduate? It's going to be, very stressful for everybody. And so in our departments, we talked about what our plan was, and talk through the complications. And then we went to our students in the classroom. We brought it up in the classroom. We had literature, like little leaflet flyers with FAQs for students about the strike. We told them, hey, we don't know if this is really going to happen, but it might happen. From the start of the term, we're letting them know, just so you know, at the end of the term, there might be a strike. It might disrupt things. We wouldn't do this if we didn't have to. We're trying to, save the college. Just letting them know about the context. And many, many, many students had instructors talking to them directly in their classrooms about this. And that was a huge part of what solidified student support for us, because they had been hearing about this from their instructors. And even if they didn't hear about it from their particular instructors, they heard about it from their classmates. And they had some time to like mentally prepare for this and think about the consequences of having a school where instructors don't get any inflation raises at all. They're not paid properly. And where programs are really precarious. And it's not like we had to persuade students. I mean, in a community college, your students are also working class. Like some of them are in unions themselves. Many of them are in unions, in fact. Sorry, getting over sick, coughing up a lung. But yeah, so students themselves are working class. They're workers. They get it. They people like teachers. People at community college, again, like they feel like community college changed their life, saved their life. They're very grateful for all the education they've gotten, and they understand how important all the support staff are, including and of course their instructors. So student support was very strong from the beginning. And one of the things that really solidified that was how the strike started. So we had planned on doing a walkout in the morning. Sorry, I'm going to cough again. Hold on. We had planned on doing a walkout in the morning on March 11th at 10:30, and we broadcast that. Management knew it was not a secret. We were very excited about it. And the day before our strike, the night before, our bargaining teams are hoping to get like a last minute deal, whatever. Didn't happen. Strike is on. All right. At about midnight, the college sends out an emergency text saying campuses are closed.
What?
So they did not hold. They basically started the strike earlier. Like they did what I think could be considered an illegal walkout, or excuse me, an illegal lockout. Because they had no reason to close the school early, other than they knew that we were planning a strike, planning a walkout. And so this was truly catastrophic. Now I totally understand why the college thought that that was a good move for them, because obviously if we interrupt our classes and we say to students, all right, 10:30, strike is on, I'm not working anymore, you're invited to come out to the picket lines with us, and we all exit the schools hand in hand, and it's beautiful and powerful and consciousness raising. And oh my gosh, that's humiliating for the college. It's just such a big show of power. I totally get why they're like, oh, we can't let that happen.
Yeah, they took the audience out of the equation, essentially.
Exactly, right. However, I think ultimately that was still the worst move, because even workers who were kind of on the fence about striking, like maybe they were reluctantly agreeing to strike, right? They're like, I guess if we really have to. They expected if you come into work at 8 o'clock, right, you're expecting to have 2.5 hours of work time to that last few hours to get stuff done, log into your email, tell students, hey, it looks like we didn't get a deal last night. It looks like the strike is on. Yeah, I'm wrapping these things up. Like, I'm making sure you're going to be okay while we're gone. Da da da. They could not do that because campuses were closed. A lot of students had questions about, like, things that they really needed to know to be ready for this. And they could not get their messages responded to that morning. It was so chaotic and so obviously punitive. And I think that fundamentally sowed the seed that was eventually our win. Because again, even people who were on the fence just were so shocked and horrified that PCC would do that, because many students, I mean, think about all the students who get services, the food pantries, the centers like the Women's Resource Center, the Queer Resource Center, all these other services, financial aid. People had so many things that they needed and they wanted to get in the last minute. And PCC took that away for no reason other than just to be jerks, to not let us have a powerful moment. And I think people realized at that moment, wow, PCC administration this is just beyond the pale. I can't believe it. There's nothing that we could do as a strike that would be worse than what administration is willing to do to our students. So we have to do this. This is such a righteous fight. And students realized, oh yeah, administration, they're not out. They do not have our best interests in mind. They are ridiculous. And
what's important to them, didn't they?
Yeah. So another thing that was really important for student solidarity was the fact that the faculty and AP union was talking about these permissive subjects. So talking about how to use our strike to save programs, to save classes. That was not, and if you read my article, I talk about that. That's one of the big myths, like, ooh, be careful. We're only renegotiating wages and benefits. You can't talk about this other stuff. You could be accused of bargaining in bad faith. A lot of anxiety about that. But I'm really glad that people did decide that this was so important. We had to. Like, how do you have a strike while they're basically killing the school from the inside by not offering classes? And you have a strike and you don't address that. How could we do that? How could we leave that fundamental problem? I mean, I just feel like the days of, striking for $3 raises, that does not cut it anymore, man. It's not about that. Obviously, we do deserve raises, and that was a big thing.
Of course.
But it's like, what is the point of a $3 raise if your program doesn't exist in 6 months? What is the point?
That's exactly right. So, like, that's also, I mean, sorry to be like, make a maybe potentially sloppy comparison, but I mean, if you look at a strike, for example, at a factory, like an auto factory in this or that city, just sort of name it, and there's tons of examples to look at. But if you strike for a raise or for better benefits or whatever in one of those sorts of deals, and they end up closing the factory in 6 months anyway, like that's gonna be something that is that's not going to do you a whole lot of good essentially in the long run. But if you strike for protections or strike for right to relocation, or to make sure that that factory is continued in operation for X number of years, and if there some kind of contingency, there's that. I see that as very similar. I see that as sort of like you're striking not just for your own benefits, which everybody should be making more money. And obviously, I mean, if you look at the auto industry and you look at academia, they're both insanely profitable. So those profits could be obviously going to the people that are doing that job every day, and not to some jerk that's decides like, oh, what I'm going to cut next. But like at the same time, like in order for that to even be sustainable, for any amount of anything that you gain in terms of like money or benefits or whatever it is, in order to continue that forward, and maybe I'm being a little bit less like cold. I'm being a little bit colder, a little bit less human than you're describing it, but it is the sort of like nuts and bolts of it. If you don't have that though, then you're just like you're not even going to be protected as workers. Not even to talk about some of the things that are good about your institutions. For example, those services that you mentioned for people and all those things that people get.
Yeah, a concrete example of what you're talking about is the Big Three strike of the United Auto Workers in 2023.
Yeah.
It had been the common wisdom in the manufacturing industry that, oh, can't strike because then they'll close your plant. But actually, during that strike under new union leadership, Sean Fain, they reopened a plant. They got a Stellantis plant reopened in the agreement on their settlement.
It still
That
sounds
is,
wrong to call Chrysler Stellantis. What the hell?
yeah, I know. But I just think that's so crazy. Like it so goes in it just so flies in the face of what people think, right? People think that that fundamentally we don't have any power to do anything. And that if we do something disruptive, then we will only be punished, right? It's really like I think of people who are, in abusive families or like stray animals, like they're just so conditioned to be fearful, to see themselves as lacking power, right? They think, oh no, I better not upset, my abusive family member, because if I speak up, they're just going to hit me and it'll go worse for me. I better not do anything. And we have to get ourselves out of that mindset of seeing ourselves as fundamentally powerless, because we're not powerless. We have actually an incredible amount of untapped power.
That's right. In fact, there are 12 myths that
Yes.
threaten the power of the strike that you just went on that maybe we can talk about.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say about just the whole context of the article is that it is really sad that this mindset I talk about of feeling that, we're all fundamentally powerless and we have to be very careful because, the most likely scenario is that we lose. That is a really common, though sort of unspoken belief. It's so
What?
deep, it's so deep within people that they don't say it, but that does drive their choices in the labor movement.
A
That
lack of
is true.
confidence.
Yes, the lack of confidence, the fundamental belief that bosses do actually have and will always have more power than workers.
And
Um,
it's not completely unwarranted just to say,
uh-huh.
because I mean, who remembers the air traffic controllers when they were all fired into the Reagan administration? I mean, like that is one of the probably the most sort of like impactful moment that's happened before probably either you or I are born, that has sort of like colored the landscape for what labor, especially like public sector unions, how they sort of like operate. There's a very sort of um, there's a very sort of like cautious approach that they go towards because they are absolutely terrified that that's going to happen again. Which I mean, okay, but like, what do you do then? Becomes the question.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's like, okay, well then what's the alternative to fighting?
Yeah.
Trying to appease the boss.
Hard, like over the years, get picked to pieces, like by
Yeah.
vultures or what?
Passive, just lay down and let things passively get
Mhm.
worse. Or, you
Fight it out
know,
when you have a chance to win
fight
them.
it out, see what happens. Yeah. So anyway, it was just really sad to see that so many people who are seen as experts in the labor movement have that mindset of being, that we're going to lose, that we're powerless. Including a lot of the staff that we pay to help us in our unions, and a lot of our elected leaders, people on our bargaining teams. And it was really incredible to me that the rank and filers, the everyday people on the picket lines, the member leaders on our contract action team, people could feel our power every day. They had a very keen sense of what our leverage was. They were so deeply committed. I mean, even when we were faced with, wow, I think we're going to have to delay spring term by a whole week. Are we ready to do that? That's way more disruptive than people wanted. I mean, they know, I think a lot of my coworkers did not want to go on strike at all, but were willing to do it if they really had to. But delay spring term, like upset the whole academic calendar, that's a level that people really had not anticipated. But hey, you do what you got to do if they force it, right? And I would say that through the strike, seeing administration's responses, seeing what the stakes were, feeling every day that actually we have the power here. We do not have to spend another day being the servants of a cruel administration, just letting things get worse every day. The idea that we could break free from that was just it was psychedelic. And you need that. You need psychedelic hope sometimes, because it's very easy to go through every day and ask, what is the point? Like, everything's going to get worse. But nothing will get better if everyone says that. So, and that hope and optimism came from the rank and file workers. And, my article talks about all the ways in which this mentality of being powerless pervaded all the strategic discussions, especially when rank and filers weren't in the room to talk to the bargaining team about it. And one of the dynamics that the article doesn't explicitly say, but I think is important for people to know, is like, why do higher ups, top elected leaders and unions, staff in state affiliate unions, national affiliate unions, especially AFT, why do they think we're powerless? Why do they try so hard to convince workers that they should settle and not fight? And the reason for that is that fundamentally worker militancy is threatening to the people who run whose careers depend on a collaborative relationship with the boss. And not just the boss as in your employer, but the ruling class. So Randy Weingarten is the president of AFT. And that directly affected what we experienced in our strike. We never interacted with her personally, but we interacted with her staff.
Well, Weingartenism is pervasive throughout AFT. I was a member of AFT for 10 years. I know all about it.
Yeah, it's awful. And
what's funny too, because it started like reference the Chicago teacher strike again. From what my understanding was, like, there was not a word that was mentioned by it publicly by like the Weingarten administration or like that. But I also do remember, like, as soon as they're like, there's no turning back, we're going on a strike tomorrow, she's like making public statements being like, we support Chicago teachers and all this other BS.
Oh yeah, of course. Someone in Chicago told me she showed up to their picket lines in a limo.
That's awesome.
I believe it.
That's kind of cool, actually.
But that's the thing, like, AFT is extremely undemocratic nationally.
Well, their like power base is New York City, basically.
Oh yeah, exactly. UFT in New York City. And Randy Weingarten's ability to stay in power within AFT, have all these resources and political prestige for her own personal benefit, depends on workers not being militant, because militancy breeds democracy. When workers go on strike, they discover their own agency. They raise their expectations for what they should expect of both their employer, but also their union. And Randy Weingarten does not want to deliver on the things that AFT members actually want, which is to fight austerity in education and so many other things.
Or at the very least, if you wanted to even put like a well-intentioned face on what she's doing, which maybe it is, if you just give all of the benefit of the doubt, then if you give all of the benefit of the doubt in that situation, you can also come to the conclusion that, oh, there's just no will to fight for these things. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like if
Yeah,
you give,
totally.
like you don't even have to. So like your framing is possibly true, but like even if you put it in the best light possible, it's still quite pathetic.
Yeah, and let's be clear. Many staff, it's not like every staff shares a consciousness with Randy Weingarten.
No, they
They
live
have
within
their
the
own
structures.
motivations.
They live within the structures that she
Right.
is master of.
And they have been taught, exactly like you're saying, they have been taught to see workers as fundamentally kind of naive. It's a very paternalistic
Mhm.
approach. It's workers are bound to make some bad choices, so we need to help them be realistic, be smart, be cautious, not you
It's
know
what the Democrats do with electoral, like,
yes.
they're
Oh,
like, "Oh, you know what? Everybody, you know what people need? They need more Alyssa Slotkins in the
it's
world."
identical to that. Yes, because it's fundamentally elitist. It's fundamentally substitutionalist, and what I mean by that is
I'm sorry, Abigail Spamberger. I have to mention her name because she just vetoed a collective public sector collective bargaining bill in
ugh,
Virginia. That college professors were actually excluded from even without the veto. But
ugh,
anyway, they have
disgusting.
no
Oh,
collective right to argue to bargain in this state.
yeah, just disgusting. But yeah, I mean, it fundamentally comes from this view that um there is an elite, an enlightened elite that should be making choices in the world. And, the peasants, the
Hoi polloi,
yeah, exactly. They don't
the
really know
unwashed
what's
masses.
yeah, they don't really know what's good for them. We know what's best for them. And if they get too riled up and believe that they are powerful, our careers, our position is threatened because it is.
Well, I mean, look what they're doing. They're doing everything they can to prevent any kind of like them like the working class from having any kind of or expressing any kind of power. So of course, if they collectively sort of like come to the realization that holy crap, these people that are saying that they're representatives of us are actually the people that are, have the bit in your mouth essentially, then 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 you're going to be like you're going to come for them first. That's, I mean, again, to make another
Yeah.
potential topic comparison, that's why the Democrats, for example, are so hell bent on stopping these Abdul Sayeds or these Graham Plattners or whatever, whether or not you like them personally or whatever the thing. Any like Bernie Sanders, like example as well, like any of these
Mhm.
insurgent forces within the sort of political structure, it's the same like thought and same
Yeah.
function of like if we don't keep a lid on this stuff, then we're going to be the ones that take the splash damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, fundamentally, it does come from a different idea about how things in the world change.
Mhm.
Most union leaders, unfortunately, many are not like this, but just the majority at this point, the American labor movement is very weak. But most of them, and certainly most staff, believe that the way you get things done is by pushing a little, but fundamentally maintaining a good relationship with the boss. And maybe even more importantly, maintaining a good relationship with political powers,
Mhm.
in the Democratic Party,
Never
especially.
worked out.
Yeah, doesn't work out. And in fact, that happened in our strike. In my article, I talk about how we have a governor, the most unpopular governor in the entire country, Tina Kotek.
Congratulations, number
Thank you.
one.
Yeah, we're number one. She's very nothing. She's blah. She stands for nothing, truly.
Yeah.
And people can
I
tell.
got Hamburger here. I had John Bell Edwards when I lived in Louisiana. All these same losers, the same.
Yeah. Total
Except, well,
loser.
John Bel Air was especially like terrible because he was like the Democrat that was like the quote unquote moderate who also signed one of the most anti-woman abortion laws in the country.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they're not just blah. They are actually quite
Malicious.
nefarious. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, just in Oregon, we're having a big issue with data centers being built. And the governor is allowing data centers to be built and pushing for tax breaks and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, she's very unpopular. She actually failed to secure the endorsement of the uh, Oregon Education Association. That's not what my union is affiliated with. That's a different education union, but that is also a union with a lot of DSA members. There's a lot of DSA member presence in my union in AFT, but also in the Oregon Education Association. And just like they're the very progressive base of educators who are like, yeah, education. By the way, I know your listeners are not in Oregon. I know you might think that, Oregon, Portland, that's like coastal
Liberal people
elite.
in Oregon.
Yeah, liberal blue Oregon. Oregon has some of the worst education outcomes in the entire country. When I was in high school, which not that long ago, 20 years ago, Oregon had
I
yeah,
hate when I come to this
I
realization.
know, damn. I was like, "Oh, I guess that is a long time ago." Well, okay, anyway. But yeah, so I'm 35. So, Oregon had the shortest school year of any state in the country when I was
Kids
in high
love it.
school.
Kids loved it,
It
no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it has some of the worst, high school graduation rates in the country. And that people can't believe that when I say that, because it's like, "Oh my god, Oregon, it's so blue." Yeah, but we don't fund our schools, and that's because we have allowed corporate interests to totally decimate our education system. Um, and and the funny thing is, okay, one funny thing I just want to tell you about Oregon. So Oregon's education outcomes, Oregon actually is the worst state for white students. In many states, um, the education outcomes are
Well,
primarily for
don't
Black
tell
and
Tucker
brown students.
Carlson.
In many states, the outcomes are very like segregated by race. They are some to some degree in Oregon, but actually the white students are also really suffering in Oregon. It's really funny because Oregon was founded as like the state of Oregon was founded as a
A
like
white
white
colony.
nationalist oasis. Yeah, and a haven for the KKK. And yet it's the worst for white children. So which is so
Mission
funny. It's so
failed.
ironic. But anyway,
We do
so
got to start mapping.
yeah, right.
Just like any final thoughts? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but there's any sort of final thoughts on sort of like what you've learned over this period and where people could find your article and find about yourself?
Yeah. No. Um, Final thoughts. I am so proud of everything we accomplished in our strike. I mean, there is just no substitute for strikes. Strikes it totally transformed my coworkers thinking on their own power, what we can accomplish. I heard people say, I lost money on this strike, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. That there were some classified workers who got a worse deal, and they said that. Um, people were just people who were skeptical of striking. They came out of it saying, "You're either with us or you're against us." Like it just opened people's minds to what we're really up against, and I'm really hopeful that over the next 2 years we can really push to change this horrible education funding system that we have in Oregon, and not just do that, but do other things too, like really bring socialist politics to education unions and to the state. Portland DSA is very ascendant right now. We have out and proud DSA cadre candidates running for city council, for state legislature, and our strike is a part of that wave, part of that socialist wave of politics. I know people may feel like, well, if you can get a good contract without going on strike, that's ideal. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, there truly is no substitute. It's like if you're in an abusive relationship and you say, well, if you do that again, I'm walking out. If you do that again, I'm breaking up. If you say that, well, if you do that one more time, but it never happens, it's meaningless. There's a big difference between saying that and then actually walking out and saying, I'm done. I'm taking my life into my own hands. And that's what we got to do as workers. That's the only way we're going to save education. That's the only way we're going to get what the working class deserves.
Well, thank you so much. You can find the article in the Call, socialistcall.com. The article is called 12 Myths That Threaten the Power of Our Strike. Strikers can expect risk-averse advice from the, quote, experts. To win, rank and file members must be on strategy discussions by Laura Wadlin and Meryl D. Pasquale. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram.
If you want to be found.
Yeah, please follow me. I'm on Instagram at FLAURABUNDA, Flora Bunda.
All right, cool.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Comrade. You can listen to us every Saturday on WHIVLP New Orleans, where this program originates. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And keep an eye out for more shows coming in the future. We got a lot of stuff coming forward. This is 7 years of Good Morning Comrade. So we're going to keep it going strong. And yeah, stay tuned. This is WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. We love you. Bye-bye.